Hey everybody, my name's Todd Dinkleman. I'm on the faculty in the Department of Math, Science, and Social Studies Education, which is the only so-named department in all of higher ed, I believe, at the University of Georgia. I'm a social studies person, former social studies teacher, been researching social studies, particularly teacher education, over the past 20 years. Been at Georgia about that long, spent some time in the Midwest before then. Chautauqua, I did not know that there were Chautauqua societies. I'm familiar in a general sense with the Chautauqua Big Tent. I'm thinking upstate New York, 1870s, 1880. My interest is, in addition to the common good and preparing students through the academy, is bringing a group of probably master's level or advanced senior level pre-service social studies teachers to work and facilitate the learning and the engagement in the academy. My interest for this group of students is I'm a big advocate of teaching through discussion and teaching through dialogue, and it's something I've worked for a couple decades helping beginning teachers think about so they can incorporate it in their practice. The most powerful ways for future teachers to learn about the power of discourse or conversation in teaching is to experience it themselves. So the idea would be these pre-service teachers and a few maybe in-service teachers would come and we're thinking about the National Issues Forum protocol, do some training on that, and then they would descend upon the academy to support the students for that week that we do that work.
My name is Christopher Riano. I am the president for the nation's Center for Civic Education, which works both around both the country and the world to work within the civic education and then the constitutional education space. And so I've actually been really interested and excited to see some of the work that folks are talking about here, because there's really no question in my mind that we're at a time in our history where a civic and constitutional education is really core, no matter what age you are. And unlike so many other different subjects that I celebrate, like math and science, and I certainly do, but civics is the only subject that is actually in every classroom. When I look around the country and I get to see the great work that's happening, I'm currently actually in California, I'm usually up in New York, and I get to see everything in between. It's really wonderful to have a chance to see what everybody's trying to put together. And I have to, obviously give a great shout out to Peter for bringing me in and looking at this from the 50 plus year history that my organization has, in ensuring that this information in a nonpartisan fashion is available to give people the tools so that they can have an understanding and be able to have complex conversations about some of the big issues that we are facing as a society. To hear exactly what Todd just talked about, to think about this in a really broad sense, because we're the idea of having both students that are going to be engaged, but of course students of different ages that can then serve as mentors and look at their own learning journey. There's nothing like a civic and constitutional education, and it's one of the reasons why it's very exciting to have a chance as the center to be a piece of this puzzle and to share in this work that everybody's looking forward to getting started.
I feel like I am related to all of you, and even to you, Christopher. I'm sure if we started dropping some names like Peter Levine, you look like someone I've seen at the Kettering Foundation before. I'm not sure if you've been there, but I connect with Madeline through friends in the community and through the adult education department. I came to Georgia in 1972. I'm old. And I taught in the adult education graduate program from 1981 until the year 2000. And so I taught my students some things about Chautauqua, because in adult education, we of course feel that the Chautauqua movement was a critical movement in adult education, because people were going around the country and, as someone earlier said, setting up their tents and trying to teach people all kinds of things about our democracy. So my, I think, connection immediately to this project is because Peter Balsamo gets your phone number and your email address, and that's it. You're hooked. You're in. And Todd and I, of course, are colleagues, but Todd I really know because my son, who is called, I'm very proud to say, the Director of Innovation in the College of Education, has repeatedly said to me, you must meet Todd. You just have to know him. So I feel connected to all of you. My immediate connection to this project is that I am one of the pioneers, that's what we get called, for the National Issues Forum. So when David Matthews and people at the Kettering Foundation were bringing people together in 1981, 40 years ago, we're celebrating our 40th anniversary, I had the opportunity, representing adult education, to think about how we established the National Issues Forum, which was because of David Matthews, who, Christopher, is a graduate of Columbia, and became the Secretary of HEW during the Ford administration. He felt that, I think really coming out of that work and perhaps some experience, he had been the president of the University of Alabama before Gerald Ford asked him to serve in the cabinet. David felt that the American public was not engaged, as they should be, in conversations about public policy issues. So I had an opportunity, along with many, many, many other people, to try to, well, inform one another about how we might create an opportunity to have conversations in the country that engage the public. We really meant everyday folks, public. And so I've been at that for 40 years. Todd has proposed this academy of an opportunity for younger students in the Athens area to come together at least for a week. It might be longer, maybe a week or 2 weeks. And he would, of course, involve some of his students. And so I have been having the good fortune with Peter and Todd to talk about how we prepare people to moderate forums that are deliberative and not debates, meaning that people entertain opinions about public policy issues, and we really emphasize as much the listening to one another as the speaking. So I'll stop there, but say, you know, that's how I see my connection to the work. It's kind of, perhaps I'll have an opportunity to work with some of Todd's students who will then be working with the younger people in the community around this academy on having good conversations that engage the public in thinking about these critical issues that we all are confronting.
What on earth is turning us into pit bulldogs in this society? Obviously, you know, this particular forum is heavy guns. A gentleman was folded into our conversation who you may or may not know. He's a high school teacher at Oconee High. His name is Mark Oglesby, and I was just trying to pull up a quote that he had sent, because when Peter and the Chautauquans and I had a conversation with him, he sent us, he believes so strongly that essentially, and I'm you know, butchering the quote here, but the school is the last fortification of democracy. And so, you know, I find myself extremely excited about the idea of a summer camp and you know, impacting lives. But I really, back to the comment that was made by you, Chris, I believe, and that is that, you know, every classroom is civics.
Madeline, I don't know you, and you look like a person I think I should get to know as well. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a friend of Margaret's, and I'm also on Peter's email list. So we certainly share that in common. I was dragged here from Atlanta 40-something years ago. I was a city girl, but there was a flagship here, and it's been the best 4 decades of my life. I am a nurse practitioner, formerly a nurse anesthetist, formerly the school nurse at Central High, currently the parish nurse at First Presbyterian Church. And my family and I have been going to Chautauqua really every summer for 2 weeks for those 40 years. And when it's one of the hardest things on earth to describe what Chautauqua is. How many, show of hands, have y'all been to the Chautauqua Institute? Well, you must go. As soon as we finish this Zoom, go ahead and start packing your bags. It is the way we were meant to be together. And I don't know another way to describe it. It is literally, when my husband and I and our 5 children all arrived inside the gates, everyone dispersed. The town square and the Hall of Philosophy and the 5,000-seat amphitheater and the regattas on the lake and the string quartets, at the colonnade, and everyone deeply interested in everyone else's thoughts and lofty ideas. And it's just across, spiritually, recreationally, culturally, artistically, intellectually. But at the end of the day, it's the collaborative interest that the citizenry, the entire family has in making it the best mousetrap we possibly can for each other.
I started going there back in the mid 1970s, and the last time I was there was back in 1999, and I'm sort of chomping at the bit to get back as soon as I can. It's on my bucket list. So I really hope I can do that. But when you see the youth there interacting with people of all different ages, and it just falls within so well the mission, the concept, the ideals of the Chautauqua Institution, the Chautauqua movement. The 10 Chautauquas were family events, and we need to also try to engage our youth as much as possible. And of course, my feeling is civics education is so crucial and so important for us to understand more intensely and more intimately what's involved with our democracies.
One of the things that I've always found that matches the federal model that we have, right, our federalism system here in America, is that it's actually really awesome and incredible that there are certain things that happen nationally, and yet I get to see things at that level, but I also get to really experiment and look at local work and state level work. And I think that is a really important feature of federalism and our very unique government and structure that we've created over these last 200 plus years. And it's actually something I celebrate because different places and different academies and different classrooms should have that opportunity. It's what I always come back to, my students are always so focused on the federal level. I get it. But we have to remember that, and Tocqueville really, showed this in his work, it's at the local level where we have the most impact and the most touch points with government. It's local government and local organizations that are truly the civil society and the civically virtuous parts of our civil society that make the largest difference in our country. And I think that's a beautiful and incredible piece that's very American. That's a very American experiment, an experience. It doesn't look like that in most other countries. And I think that's something that really allows us to take and look at national issues. And it's something that we, will always be looking at on a national level and have these conversations in local environments in something like what folks are trying to put together here.
When we started out, we gave them what's America's role in the world, freedom of speech, all these really incredibly wonderful big issues, national issues. But then increasingly people came back to us and said, we want to frame our own issues. We want to frame our local issues. And even students in high schools. So even though there still is a national issues forum, and there are people at the national level who have a process for framing 3 or 4 issues every year, we have people all over the country who've taken this on themselves and framed their local issue. The issue isn't important. The issue is important, but it's not what's most important. It's that people learn how to deliberate and weigh options and make choices and decisions as citizens. What I think you can learn by participating in a national issues forum that you can transfer to other places where you have to make decisions, in your church, in your community, in your civic organization. So, I mean, I completely agree with you. I mean, people, the everyday folks will immediately take you back to their local issues. That's what's burning with them.
It's great to talk about 1787. I'm the first person that is happy to do it. But I also think it's important to talk about how we make a difference, right? And that's a part of a civic and constitutional education too. And it's one of the things I'm always very proud of when it comes to the work that I get to do is I get to do both. I get to talk about 1787 and I get to talk about 1776 and I get to talk about 1950 and 1950. I mean, I get to talk about history, but then I also get to work on, and we call it Project Citizen, but I get to work on a program where we also teach people to recognize issues in their community and then learn how to solve those issues. I mean, one of the great aspects of our democracy are both its strengths and its weaknesses, and then the importance that we place on through dialogue and discussion on strengthening those weaknesses and finding ways to do better and constantly striving for that. So I love what you just said, Margaret, because in so many ways, it's options like this and opportunities like this where we're able to do and look at both of those things to create stronger communities.
If we could teach people how to hold conversations where we can value facts and where we can value people's stories. And I just want to give one quick example of something that happened in one of the forums I was participating in years ago. And the topic that year, the issue that was being discussed was affirmative action. And there was a Black gentleman in the group. I think he was like with the Urban League from Portland. And he said, well, I want to say to all of you that I think the first official affirmative action program in the United States was the GI Bill. And I just remember sitting there going, oh my God, it was. It privileged a group of people. And I always thought in a wonderful way, so they could go to college. And then all of a sudden, this gentleman from Portland said, but you have to understand, if you were returning from the war and you were Black and you returned to Georgia or Alabama or some other states, you were officially entitled to these benefits, but the University of Georgia was segregated. The University of Alabama was segregated. And the people of white privilege would say, well, you need to move. Really? So to me, that was where hearing the story was so important to considering and weighing the issue, because it seemed like this was an affirmative action practice that on the surface sounded really wonderful, but it had not been an opportunity for everyone. And that was a part of then the deliberation. By having the different perspectives and voices, and that's where I think facts matter, and also these stories matter that we sometimes haven't considered.
My husband and I always touchstone the Smithsonian Mall, and I noticed off to the right at the intersection of Constitution and 4th, a new exhibit that had not been there before, and it's the Dwight D. Eisenhower. And it is set in front of the Department of Education. And it's all about the war. and our commander-in-chief. But when I approached it, I thought it was going to be about Arkansas. And as you're talking and you realize how on President Eisenhower's watch, he sent the national troops to Little Rock to escort the children, you realize that was just the start.
I come out of the tradition of social studies or civic education that's kind of critical and progressive. And to come from that camp of my discipline, I guess, would put you in kind of a reformist position, especially so in Georgia, because our schools, I mean, it's not a tough sell conceptually to argue that people should talk together and facts matter and reason and listening. But as compelling as those ideas are, they're so rare in so many social studies classrooms, K through 12. In the last 4 years, I've just been taken aback. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about what's not happening in social studies classrooms and thinking about ways to make inroads in that. So, for example, in Georgia right now, I'm working with student teachers who are out there in a COVID-placed environment, but the inauguration came up. This is where we're starting from in some schools in Georgia. We're not talking about We the People or Project Citizen. We're talking about a memo coming down from the administration that says you will not mention the inauguration. It stopped me in my tracks then, and I thought, okay, buying into this myth of progress, here we are in 2020, 2021, thank you, Peter. You'd think that we've moved past that, but we're so polarized right now. And the aims that I have for this academy are pretty simple, actually. They're simple yet pretty profound, I think. And that is, it's not about promoting, some grand vision of democratic theory. I'm excited about the experiential aspect of, issues aside, the issues do matter. But what I want my students to experience is helping the facilitation of 14, 15, 16, 17-year-olds see what it's like just to engage in a kind of conversation that they may not have ever participated in before.
This has been exceptional, and I don't know that we're going to have to do very much editing at all. I think You've done it in the can. One thing I did want to say, and I say this as someone who is point person for the Youth Performance Academy, and Chris, can you come in?
Yeah.
Chase and I, Chase and I have spent all day together, which is why we look like 2 fried eggs probably in the pan. This has been so uplifting, but I'm envisioning the marriage of the Civil Discourse Academy with the Youth Performance Academy, because we've been working with professors who are actors, who do Margaret Mitchell and Che Guevara and everything in between, and looking at the wondrous experiences they have had in their own professional lives, but also the children they work with, in having them take people of historic merit and researching them and writing scripts and developing performances and Q&As in and out of character. And I'm thinking, gosh, we need to rent the Classic Center.
As the youngest person in the room, I've come into this, despite being hired to help edit a video, I've come in quite skeptical of everything that Madeline has told me, just because sometimes I'm a skeptical human being, and it, my eyes have been opened, one, to historical reenactment, but civics. Hearing you all talk about civics, despite having an incredible education and being a performer and awesome parents and lovely family, I realized in my own education as a child, I had very few active civic engagement. We talked about civics and we talked about arguments, but very little tangible, let's sit down at a table with someone you may not agree with, or let's talk about a topic and just sit and talk. And, I think as every young person that I know, young, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, they are capable.